All right, so hi everyone in the audience today. Really excited to have the chance to talk with you about FreeFlyer and our plans for 2021, and also specifically how you can be involved in helping to form the future of FreeFlyer. Like Motaz said, I'm Sarah Fields. I'm the FreeFlyer product manager, a job that I love. And I'll just give you a little bit of my background. I first joined the FreeFlyer team many years ago as a member of the FreeFlyer technical support team. So I spent several years teaching FreeFlyer training classes at different customer sites, answering lots of customer questions, and getting exposure to just like a really fantastic variety of different astrodynamics problems that I got to help our users solve in FreeFlyer. After those years on the tech support team, I left the FreeFlyer team to work on a few spacecraft missions, and so got just a lot of great experience and wider perspective about what it's really like to work on a mission. I got to work on problems like maneuver analyses, trajectory design and optimization, and a lot of sort of the classic astrodynamics problems, and domains ranging from launch to really deep space. So during that time, I actually used a lot of other industry flight dynamics tools. So again, that broadened my perspective about the different tools that are out there, the different choices that our users have in terms of what tool to use to solve a problem. And honestly, during that time, I missed having the tool that I loved. I mean, I'm sorry if that comes off kind of gushy, but I missed working with FreeFlyer. And so I was able to rejoin the FreeFlyer team at that point as the product manager. And so as the product manager, my key responsibility is FreeFlyer's roadmap, our plans for the future, and really helping to make sure that the things that we build into FreeFlyer are things that our users will really enjoy using. So, quick agenda here. I'll have basically two main sections to my talk, talking about how we plan FreeFlyer's roadmap, and then telling you about what's coming in FreeFlyer 2021. And then finally, we'll have an interactive activity. And just to get you primed for that interactive activity, you can be thinking about it while I'm talking about these other things. The question I'll be asking the audience today is, what would your top request be for FreeFlyer in 2021? And I'll remind you what the question is when we get to that point. As always, throughout the conference this week, you're muted, my audience today, but you can ask questions through the questions interface, and then our moderator, Motaz, will ask them to me at the end of the talk. So, planning FreeFlyer's roadmap. If you tuned in for Michael Barton's talk earlier today, he gave a great overview of the history of FreeFlyer and all of the different enhancements that we've made to FreeFlyer over the years since it originally started. And you might wonder, well, why did we decide to make those enhancements rather than others? And so that's basically what I want to talk to you about right now. So how do we determine what goes on FreeFlyer's roadmap? The main input is you, it's our users. We are trying to build the tool that you want to use for your mission, for your analysis, for your research. And so all of the requests that you make, whether that's through your account manager or through our tech support team, or just reaching out to me directly or anyone that you know on the FreeFlyer team, all of those requests become candidates for additions to FreeFlyer. And the third source of input to that candidate pool is the FreeFlyer development team. And so I work closely with the developers and talk with them about what do they think needs to be added to FreeFlyer in order to keep the code running smoothly and ready for future enhancements. So that candidate pool, all of your requests and all the things that the developers say need to happen to keep FreeFlyer up to date, I basically run those through a few different sort of filters. And so I consider all of the past history, all of the past interest in a particular request. So I'll look at the number of people, the number of different organizations and spacecraft missions that have asked for that particular thing before. And that will be weighed in addition to the amount of impact or the amount of value that we're creating by adding a particular feature. And then we'll also do industry research. And so by that, I mean, what missions are coming up on the horizon, and do those missions need particular capabilities to really enable them to solve their problem in FreeFlyer? We'll also look at what academic research is being done, and with that particular enhancement that's being requested, that's a candidate to add to FreeFlyer, would it be in line with the direction that the academic community is going? Is it, investing in something cutting edge or something that's in the past? And so we consider that as well. And then we consider our product goals for FreeFlyer. FreeFlyer isn't done yet. We have a vision for where we want to go with it, and we're probably never going to stop adding to it because we enjoy this job so much. And so we have a vision for what FreeFlyer can become and how powerful it can be and how easy to use it can continue to improve in that area. And so we also consider that, is this moving FreeFlyer more towards where we want it to be, or would it be a little bit of a distraction from those long-term goals? And so considering all those factors, we choose the candidates that make it through those filters and onto FreeFlyer's roadmap. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is really how you can be involved in this process. So once we select headliner features for the next release of FreeFlyer that are on the roadmap and are going to be developed, we have high standards on our team, and we don't want to build just any solution. We want to build a great solution for you. And so the question is, how do you design new features that your users will embrace and enjoy using and come back to again and again to solve the problem that you're trying to help them solve? So the answer to that question, as best as I can figure it out, is to work closely with your users during the development process. Our stakeholders, and by stakeholders, I just mean our users who care, our users who are passionate about FreeFlyer or about having a tool that helps them solve their problems, our users who use FreeFlyer, most of their day, and they really care about making it a better experience for themselves. They're our stakeholders, and they're crucial to our development process in addition to just being users. You may or may not know that we have not only external users of FreeFlyer, but also internal users at AI Solutions, our company. We have at AI Solutions a mission services branch that employs a lot of flight dynamics subject matter experts. And so we work closely with those internal users of FreeFlyer as we're building new features. We actually have an internal exchange program that rotates experts from around the company onto the FreeFlyer team temporarily to help us develop a particular new feature that they are an expert in. And I'll give you some examples of that throughout my talk. We also have close relationships with a lot of our users who are outside our company. And so basically we identify who might be a stakeholder in a particular feature through your interaction with your account manager, with our tech support team. And then we reach out to you as we're developing a feature that you've expressed interest in the past, so that you can help to weigh in on how the feature will be built. And so a big theme here is how important it is for you to mention to your account managers or to technical support if you wish something existed in FreeFlyer, because they record that in a tracking system. All of the feedback, whether you talk to sales or to tech support, goes into the same system, and then I review all of that. And so when we start to build a new feature, I know your name is on the list of people that I could reach out to ask if you have input that you want to share. So I want to talk a little bit more about how, in what ways do we work with you during developing new features for FreeFlyer. At the very early stages of developing a new feature for FreeFlyer, we're in the early research phase, and at that point we reach out to those stakeholders and we talk to them about their use cases and what requirements would they want to levy on FreeFlyer for providing that new feature. And so we have those conversations with stakeholders, again, people who work just down the hall at our office, or people who are across the country at our different, external user locations. And we come up with a plan on paper within our team. And we come up with this plan, we write out everything that we want to provide. And then step 2 is that we reach back out to those stakeholders and we share with them, here's the plan, here's what we want to build. What do you think? Is this what you were hoping for? Is this what you were envisioning? Do you have any feedback for us? And then after iterating on that plan on paper with the users, then we go to the beta testing phase where, excuse me, as we develop these new features, we're providing product demos to show users through a virtual forum like this today. Here's this new feature in action. What feedback do you have? Or we actually give a beta test build of FreeFlyer to those users so that they can test it out for themselves. So I'll give a couple examples of how this goes. As the team has already talked about today, one of the major sets of enhancements that we added in FreeFlyer 7.6 just recently is a set of relative motion enhancements. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about how that came together. In the early research phase, again, we had a list of stakeholders that we had recorded over time who were interested in more relative motion features in FreeFlyer. And so we reached out to those users and those missions. So for example, we had some users who are working on OSAM-1, which is NASA's on-orbit servicing assembly and manufacturing mission. And so we worked with them to find out what capabilities would they need. We have users working on constellation design and analysis, and in the constellation domain, relative motion is important because you don't want to have your different satellites within your constellation coming too close to each other, having possible conjunction. So you need to really analyze the relative motion of the elements of the constellation with respect to each other. And we have a lot of users basically in the space domain awareness field, where you may be making observations from one satellite with respect to another. And again, the relative motion of those two satellites is an important part of the modeling of that problem. So we reached out with those users. We talked with them about what they would like to see in FreeFlyer. We put together the plan on paper. And so our plan included adding the Hill-Clohessy-Wiltshire, the HCW propagator to FreeFlyer, adding a new delta V calculator for relative maneuvers, and adding curvilinear reference frames because we knew that over the years, that's something that different user groups had requested several times. So we knew we wanted to add that. We shared that plan on paper with our stakeholders, and one of them actually said, I just remembered, or I've always had this idea about relative motion orbit wizards in FreeFlyer. FreeFlyer has had for many years orbit wizards that let you set up a sun-synchronous orbit or a geosynchronous orbit, but I have this idea for relative motion orbit wizards where I could set up a safety ellipse or a walking safety ellipse or a projected circular relative motion path. And so could we add that to the plan? And we said, that sounds like a great idea. We'd love to add that. And so that also became a part of the plan. And then we move on into the development phase. And as we add all of these different new features to FreeFlyer, we shared a series of beta releases of FreeFlyer to those stakeholders. And they were able to make more suggestions. They were able to catch small problems that were still in the early beta release phase of FreeFlyer at that point. And we were able to make those improvements and incorporate those suggestions before the final release. So I'll talk you through a similar story with the optimization features that we've just added. I'm really proud to finally have added optimization support built into FreeFlyer. And in the early research phase, again, we just had conversations with a lot of different users. And so a few of the capabilities that came out in those early discussions were, oh, I really want to be able to easily import an SNUP spec file. And we learned, oh, okay, you got it, like that's going on the plan. Users told us that they felt it was really important that the optimization system should be fully compatible, easy to use with FreeFlyer's runtime API. So that became an important priority for us. And then another thing that I'm particularly proud of is that users told us that the ability to specify analytic derivatives is really enabling for, obviously, for doing more cycles, for doing faster convergence on your optimization problems, and then that lets you do more cycles on your studies and generate better results. And so that also became something that we identified early on through our conversations with users like you that we wanted to make sure to add to FreeFlyer. So we put together that plan on paper. We knew we wanted to support any number of state variables and constraints. We wanted the user to be able to specify any objective function that they want. And after talking with users at this stage, users asked, one user in particular asked, oh, can I run this in a mode where I just solve the constraints and find a feasible solution to the problem without actually continuing to optimize it? And we said that would be easy to add to the plan, no problem. So that became a part of the plan. Then in the beta testing phase, again, we just shared a series of early, preliminary releases of FreeFlyer with those users that we were working closely with. And they made a lot of suggestions. A lot of those suggestions we were able to incorporate into FreeFlyer 7.6. And a few of them, we didn't have the time at that point to add those into that release. And so we're tracking them for the future. So in a few minutes, as I talk more about our plans for 2021, I'll tell you about how we're going to continue working on optimization features in FreeFlyer. So a summary of all these beta releases that I'm talking about by the numbers. So we released 11 beta releases during the last 4 months prior to the release of FreeFlyer 7.6. 6 of those were optimization beta releases, and we were able to share those with 8 different organizations, one of those being AI Solutions and our internal users, and then 7 external companies and agencies that we were able to give early access to optimization features in FreeFlyer. We had 2 beta releases of the relative motion features shared with 3 organizations, and then 3 other beta releases for separate smaller projects where it was just one beta release for a particular capability, such as the diagnostics capability that Cody talked about earlier. And this one isn't a number, but I did want to mention that we do provide our beta testers with help because you can imagine that if you only have a short window of time to give feedback, that learning a new optimization tool, how to use it, and then being able to give feedback is something that's a little bit difficult to do in a short amount of time. And so we always provide a quick start guide, like a reference guide on how to use the new feature, because often at that point, the documentation isn't built into FreeFlyer's help file yet, so we provide a separate guide for the new feature. And then depending on if it's a really large new capability like optimization, we'll also teach training sessions on the new feature to those stakeholders. All right, and so my whole message with this whole first part of my talk is that if you are interested in helping to shape what FreeFlyer looks like in the future and the tool that you have access to in the near future, we would love to work with you. We're always trying to build the tool that you want to use. And so please feel free to reach out to me directly, to anyone on the FreeFlyer team, to let us know about what features you'd like to see. What is your top request for FreeFlyer in 2021? And excuse me, you can feel free to say that one of the topics I've already talked about today, something we're already planning for 2021, is your top request. That would make me really happy. We're on the right track in that case. It could be one of the topics I mentioned that we're looking at for the future past 2021, or it could be something that I haven't mentioned at all. So for this, for this poll, I don't have the results showing up live. I'm going to give it a minute for everyone to think about this and write in their results. I have a second screen here, so I'll just be able to take a look at what you guys are saying as your answers are coming in. Great. Someone wrote Phoenix, Arizona on this question. I'm going to remove that result because I think you probably meant that for the other poll before I moved on. Great. I'm going to give another minute or so for people to write in their answers. And you guys can see the number ticking up in the top corner here. So we have 18 responses so far, which is awesome. All right, 21 responses. I think I can move on and it won't close the poll. So let's see. This is what you guys had to say today. This is really fun. I really appreciate people participating. I hope that it's still open and that you're able to submit an answer if you haven't yet. Okay, good. I can see that there's more coming in. So interplanetary terrain, that really pops up large. Several people wrote the same exact thing, letter for letter. What a cool message to see from the group today, that that's something that really stands out. Low thrust optimization, I'm really excited to see that in big bold letters too, because that's something that we're working on right now. Like I said before, if that's your top request that you just wrote in, please reach out to us and let us know, because I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about the tool that you want so that we can build it for you. Dark mode, that's awesome. That's another thing that I want to add to FreeFlyer and that is on the roadmap, not for 2021 probably, but is on the roadmap. User-defined measurement models, low thrust again, lunar and Martian terrain, so another way of saying interplanetary terrain, electric propulsion, better SRP, Mac OS, modernizing the UI. I completely agree with the audience here. These are great requests. I will definitely, so this snapshot isn't in the slides that I posted earlier, but I'll make sure that this gets posted so that everyone can refer back to this and see the audience requests after this event today. Recognition of re-entrant orbits, that's interesting. Whoever wrote that in, I'm interested to know what you meant about recognition of. And so, yeah, please reach out to tech support or myself directly and elaborate on that. Commercial airlines coverage, that's another one. I'm not completely sure what you are envisioning. And so again, reach out to me, let's talk about that. Unit testing, that's definitely something that I want to add to FreeFlyer. Backend visibility and control. I'm guessing that there's some sort of interfaces that you wish you had in FreeFlyer that you feel that is not visible to you, that's hidden in the back end. And I don't want to hide things away in the back end. I want to give you the interfaces that you want in the tool. And so reach out. Let's talk about specifically, what do you wish that you had that visibility into or that control of? Help learn existing functionality. That's interesting as a top request. Please reach out to our support team to talk more about how we could help you learn. Right. This is really great. 30 responses. Thank you everyone for participating. I am at the end of my talk. Again, thank you for all of your input and for your attention. Here's my contact information if you want to reach out to me. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a really fun exercise at the end. And I honestly relate with so many of the comments that came through. We have a lot of feedback and some questions that I would like to relate to you. But some people have mentioned that they really love the list of what's coming in 2021. Some people are really excited to see these enhancements. There is a small concern that came from one of the audience, which is regarding low thrust. So you mentioned that low thrust support will be as one of the top features for 2021. Is that something that FreeFlyer currently does not support? As far as I know, it supports and it has many capabilities for that, but you're going to be improving it. So can you explain or talk about this in FreeFlyer and what's planned? Thank you.
That's a great question. So you can model low thrust in FreeFlyer today, for sure. We have both impulsive maneuver modeling and finite maneuver modeling in FreeFlyer today. And so to model low thrust, you can easily use our finite burn modeling with a very low thrust value to model a low thrust sequence. You can also, in early mission design, model low thrust as a series of impulses that are spread out over time. That's something that's a very common technique, and you can do that in FreeFlyer today too. What we really want to do is make the workflow easier. We want to make it more a tool that was designed to make it easy to model low thrust and to change the control law over time, easier than it is today. And so that's what we're focusing on for 2021.
That's great news. Thank you, Sarah. There is a small question about surveys, and I'm going to answer that. So the survey for these webinars will be at the end of the conference, and you will be getting an email, and there's going to be a poll as well that we're going to have towards the end of this week. There's a question for you, Sarah, and that is about, it says, will the fleet plate modeling discussed for upcoming capability be specific to SRP, or will it also be applicable to other applications like driving? So what are your thoughts?
That's a great question. I think that for 2021, I can't say yet. It will definitely be for SRP, depending on the speed of the development and the numerical validation for that. Then we may also add drag support for 2021, or we would, if not, then we would track drag support for flat plate modeling for the future. So whoever asked that question, I'd love to talk with you more about your mission and how critical that need is, because we do have a little bit of flexibility on that question.
Yeah, and that's really, I would like to comment on that, Sarah. So to all our audience and to anybody else that you're connected with using FreeFlyer, we prioritize what you tell us to prioritize. We are, as a company, we are customer driven. Your feedback is really valuable. So whenever we get thoughts like that, or questions, we would like to talk, as Sarah mentioned, and we really need to understand how important it is for you. And if it needs to be done, it will be done. So Sarah, we have some questions about certification. What are the planned certification programs and what's already in place? Can you speak to that a little? I know you mentioned it's not been decided fully yet what all the certification exams for 2021 will be, but what are the thoughts? What do you have? What are the topics that are being considered?
Yeah, so I think part of the question was what's available today. Is that right? And so the FreeFlyer Level 1 certification basically covers our FreeFlyer fundamentals class. And so anyone can access the FreeFlyer fundamentals class through YouTube. It's a 3-part YouTube video that you can watch and you can follow along. If you need a FreeFlyer license while you're doing that, just reach out. And then after you've gone through that FreeFlyer fundamentals class, whether through YouTube or through a live class that we teach, well, live, I was going to say in person, but it would be virtual these days, then you're able to take the Level 1 certification for free, and you should be able to pass that just based on that fundamentals course. For Level 2, we're planning on having I think that the plan is to have different subject areas that you would be able to get Level 2 FreeFlyer certification. And so those could include orbit determination, maneuver planning, maneuver targeting, maneuver optimization, contact analysis, RF link analysis, that kind of thing. I don't know, Motaz, do you have any in mind that are other good examples?
Yeah, I believe you mentioned some of them, spacecraft propagation and use cases as well, and interplanetary analysis. I think that pretty much, covers some of the topics that are being studied at the moment, and we should be waiting for some feedback to choose between them, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we have one last question for you, and let me rephrase that. So what about adding attitude simulator to FreeFlyer? For example, when moment will be when. Actually, I think that explains without getting into details. But what are your thoughts on increasing the attitude simulation capacity of FreeFlyer?
Yeah, I think I'm very interested in that. I mentioned SLU planning as a little dip of the toe into further attitude modeling enhancements in FreeFlyer. SLU planning is stage one potentially to adding more and more attitude modeling capabilities. And so I would be really interested to add that further support. It's not going to be 2021, I wouldn't imagine, but I would love to talk with you about momentum wheel modeling with thrusters that can apply torque. I mean, that's basically torques are not modeled in FreeFlyer today. It's a 3DOF simulation program and not a 6DOF program. But I'm very interested to talk with users about how we could move in that direction in the future.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna following this conference, we're gonna actually reach out to every single person who had a request or made a comment on features, and we look forward to scheduling meetings with you, communicating, to get these features into the development pipeline. Sarah, I think this covers all our questions from the audience. I have a question for you, perhaps not a question, but a request for clarification. So as we heard, when it comes to low-thrust propulsion, the capabilities exist in FreeFlyer. However, we're looking to improve that. So when you mentioned for power generation and things like that you're looking to enhance, and for communication, we already have some communication capabilities, but we're looking to improve them. Can you briefly speak about how what kind of communication capabilities are in the software, and what are you looking to improve, and how are you going to be improving that?
Absolutely. So FreeFlyer today has high fidelity modeling of fields of view, whether that's sensors on a spacecraft or ground antennas on the Earth or other solar system bodies. And so being able to compute line of sight visibility, taking into account refraction through the Earth's atmosphere, taking into account blockages by Earth terrain, and then also modeling an RF antenna gain pattern and taking that into account to compute signal received. That's all in FreeFlyer today. When I talked about possible future enhancements, I'll rattle off a few enhancements that I would be interested to add to FreeFlyer related to communications. So one area is modeling atmospheric loss in your RF link computations. Right now, the inputs into that system in FreeFlyer is that the user specifies a constant number for atmospheric loss. We haven't yet modeled that really in FreeFlyer. I would love to add that to FreeFlyer. Another example would be making it easier to have an articulating field of view on a sensor or a ground station, a field of view that changes over time for a ground station, rather than sort of the way it currently is, where FreeFlyer assumes that you have one fixed field of view over time. So those are a couple examples.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think we don't have any more questions, but we have a few more minutes if somebody has some feedback they would like to share. Thank you so much, Sarah, for talking about the development pipeline for FreeFlyer and how people can engage with our team and how the decision-making process is. Because I think that's very important for people to understand that their feedback and their thoughts and their requests actually do matter, and it's what drives us as a company. So thank you so much, Sarah. This concludes our session today. And tomorrow we have a really interesting agenda for you. We're going to be going in more technical detail, focusing primarily on optimization of FreeFlyer, and also address how you can use FreeFlyer for operations. So stay tuned. Today we had a chance to cover FreeFlyer at a high level. We talked about the updates, we talked about the history, we talked about the capabilities and the features, and we discussed and presented how we make our decisions when it comes to developing certain features and what's next. Tomorrow and the following and the rest of this week, we're going to dive into different capabilities. We're going to talk about them in more detail, and we're excited to have you join us. Thank you all, and have a great day, night, and we're gonna see tomorrow.